I have the privilege of living, working, and streaming this show from a place called Secwepemcúl'ecw, which is the unceded traditional territory of the Secwépemc Nation. The city I live in is called Salmon Arm in British Columbia, Canada. And this watershed where we live is truly a world class gem. People come from all over the world to recreate and hang out on this beautiful Shuswap Lake. It's a massive lake. It's normally crystal clear. And for being such a warm lake in the summer, especially, that's not typical. But it's so clear, fed by 7 enormous rivers. Um, and it's so clean, actually, that our city draws our drinking water from it. Now, this summer, our beautiful lake had a massive algae bloom. And the lake actually for the most of the summer was like green pea soup. And this is the second time it's happened in just a few years. It happened just a few summers ago on one of the lakes that feed into Shuswap Lake called Mara Lake, had an algae bloom. Um, and you know, this happens for a number of factors, which we'll talk about. But bottom line, what's done on the land is written in the water and ultimately ends up in our bodies. So given that, what better person to talk about this and these connections than a medical doctor? So I'm really excited to introduce to you our guest today, Dr. Warren Bell. Hi, Warren.
Oh, very hello.
Warren is a physician. He's also my neighbor, like about 10 minutes down the road walking. A colleague of mine. I'm happy to call him my friend. And he's also the past founding president of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, which is a national organization. He's also the president of a local not-for-profit called WATER, which is a pretty cool acronym for Wetland Alliance, the Ecological Response. And he happens to be a rural preceptor at the University of British Columbia. So thanks so much for sharing your time with us today and everybody, Warren.
Delighted to be here, Barry. Delighted.
So CFX is an acronym that I've coined because cumulative effects is a big word. You hear it like cumulative effects, cumulative effects. Sometimes it feels like marbles in my mouth. CFX is a super easy thing. So if you hear me saying that or the namesake of the show, it's just an acronym to make it easy. And, people, economies, and environment. These are the big gears that drive the outcomes that we experience in the world. How are they really connected? I'm a systems ecologist, and I spend most of my time looking at the transactions and the interactions of all of those parts and those great big systems. And I'm convinced that if we understand those connections better, all of us, that's what's going to help us unlock prosperity while caring for the earth, which is, in effect, sustainability into the future. So that's why I created this show, CFX, The Connection of Things. It's about connection. And Warren and I want to connect with you. So if you're on live with us, use the chat bubble and we can message with you. I noticed I've had a couple of messages from people having difficulties with the direct URL. So if that's not working for people, they can just go to YouTube and search Barry J. Wilson CFX and you'll find us and we'll be there. So Warren, we've got a lot to get to. I'm going to start the intro music and let's get on with it. Oh, we're lucky here to live in the Shuswap. There's a lot of musicians here, and we get to hear that groovy vibe all the time. Warren, there's there's been some investigations into the causes of that algae bloom that we had this summer, and the Shuswap Watershed Council, who's one of the agencies that oversees this, has sort of described it as a perfect storm of events. High runoff, and a warm summer, loosening up a bunch of nutrients that have accumulated in soils over the decades and got flushed into the lake this year. And it's been acknowledged that there's agriculture, housing, commercial development, and septic are all contributing these nutrients into the lake. But I don't think that it's quite just the perfect storm and not going to happen again. I feel like this is a trend. And interestingly enough, this summer, actually it was in September, I was working with hydrologists up in Upper Chase Creek, which is just the next watershed over the mountain. We are way up in the headwaters and huge amounts of algae in the creek. So I've got some video actually of that, surprising. So the only things that are up there really are logging roads, wildfires, and free range cattle. So I think that there's more than just people at the bottom of the valley. It just, Warren, you started the water group, Wetland Alliance, the Ecological Response, in part by recognizing this connection that I'm sort of trying to draw us to, that our lake is really the recipient of everything that comes from our wetlands and our rivers. And as a doctor, you have this unique perspective, understanding what the consequence is for our health and our bodies. And I'm wondering if we can start there, if you can share your perspective on these connections.
Sure, I'm more than happy to, Barry. I think the main thing that's come to my mind over the decades I've been practicing as a physician is that human beings are animals, and as a result, we share not only a vast amount of DNA with other creatures on the planet, but we also do all the things the other creatures do. When I look at somebody's health, I see them as a living organism in constant interaction with the environment around them.
Right.
Now, another point that has been part of what I've done over the years is employ the fact that I am a practicing physician as a means to get people to pay more attention to issues that people like yourself and many other well-schooled, knowledgeable, experienced scientists have learned, and take that information and place it in the minds of the people that come to see me, as well as learning about the things that you and other scientists with an ecological perspective study, so that I can see if I'm observing effects of the changes that are taking place in the ecosystem in the health of my patients. And it goes back to the early part of my practice when I first came to Salmon Arm in '79. I had a patient who had multiple miscarriages after she'd had 2 successful births in another community, but she moved to a place which was right in the middle of an orchard where they were spraying every year. She had 4 late miscarriages, and then they switched to a detergent-based spray, and she had 2 more kids without any trouble whatsoever. Now,
Wow.
that's one example, but I could give many more. And the literature is now, the medical literature, while we tend to focus on what patients do in their lives or on diseases which we think have just, leaped out of the undergrowth, fully formed, the fact is that most of the problems that people have are strongly influenced by the food they eat, the exercise they get, and the respiration that is caused by that, the air they breathe, and the practices they engage in their own lives. And as a result, it's impossible to really be, especially as the 21st century advances, to be a physician and not start to take into account that interaction between our bodies and the world around us.
Yeah, and I guess it's getting more and more complicated too now. Like especially if I think about like water is one component, and we're in this watershed, and so we all share the water that comes to us is a shared resource that has to deal with everything that's happening in the watershed. But because we're so connected now, like food, we bring in food from so many different places that, um, like you're having to deal with food that's prepared with herbicides or pesticides or other things in other countries, other jurisdictions, and where we have little control over that.
Yeah, all of the things that we do to the planet in one part, we do to the planet in all other parts. You know, the story of the butterfly flapping its wings in the rainforest, changing the course of world history. That process, while that's a little bit arch, nonetheless, it does indicate something that's very true, and that is that there are no barricades and boundaries and separative structures that keep us apart from one another when we disperse the stuff we like to play with, chemicals, materials of one sort or another. When we disperse them into the ecosystem, they go where the ecosystem decides to send them, not where we want them to be.
Right.
And we have a huge history of what Carl Henrik Robert, who started the natural step in Sweden, calls molecular garbage. And it's in all of us. The Center for Disease Control every 2 years does an analysis of a random sample of Americans and finds that the average American has 40 to 60 industrial chemicals in amounts in their bodies similar to the amounts of our main hormones like cortisone and thyroxine and some of the pituitary hormones. So we're playing with fire. We've been doing it for 150 years on a grand scale, and on a much smaller scale, probably for 8 or 10,000 years. But the last 150 years, we've just gone wild, and now there are 80 to 100,000 of these chemicals. So as a physician, I deplore the fact that we tend to talk about diseases and not about interconnections between us and the ecosystem and the role that that plays, because it really is important.
Yeah, yeah, and last week we were talking. Dr. Joe Blakely and I were talking about that, sort of in this notion of unintended consequences, which leads me to our first segment, which is the Forest of Whispering Speakers. So I want to get over there and then continue on this thread, Warren, but to share some knowledge from an amazing artist that we all know. So let's get over there. Vibe for the opening to the Forest of Whispering Speakers this week because I want to talk about Johnny Cash. My dad always liked Johnny Cash, and so I grew up on Cash's music for sure, and I love it too. And my dad plays guitar, and he also has a deep voice like Johnny Cash. So I got to really enjoy my dad's rendition of that, as well as Johnny's. And a few years ago, Karen and I were in Davis, California, as I had an opportunity to be a guest speaker at a conference at the University of California, sharing what we've learned about cumulative effects up here in Canada. And it was a week-long event. And one afternoon we had a break because we missed out on registering for one of the field trips. So instead of doing that, we bolted out to Folsom, California, and got to see the Johnny Cash exhibit that's at the prison there. And if you've ever sort of, we all know the hits of Johnny Cash, but there's so much depth in so many of his lyrics in some of the less famous songs, and very thoughtful artist. As I was preparing for our talk today, I received a gift from my muse, my inspiration, about this song, Don't Go Near the Water, Johnny Cash, 1974. And it's from his album, Ragged Old Flag. And so you should really go listen to that song. and hear him sing it, but I'm just going to walk through the lyrics. That's why I got my glasses on so I can read this. But I think it's exactly what Warren and I have been talking about here. So he says, and then there's also an aspect of mental health. From the fountains in the mountains comes the water running cool and clear and blue, and it comes down from the hills and it goes down to the towns and passes through. When it gets down to the cities, then the water turns into a dirty gray. It's poisoned and polluted by the people as it goes along its way. Don't go near the water, children. See the fish all dead up on the shore. Don't go near the water, because the water isn't water anymore. And then he goes into this sort of, it's almost like a soliloquy in the song, where he's talking, not singing. And this is the deep emotional connection we have with this thing and what it means for us and our families. I took my boy fishing to my old favorite fishing hole. I had caught many a fish out of that deep, clear water from the time I was a boy like him. And after we'd fished a few minutes, he said, "Did you get a bite yet, Daddy?" And I said, "I think I got a nibble, son." "Me too," he said. Then he said, "Daddy, if we catch a fish, can we eat him?" And I said, "Well, there was a time, son, but this water's bad now and it might not be safe to eat that fish. But there was a time." And he goes on to talk about that connection and the fact that, in so many places, don't go near the water because the water ain't water anymore. And when I started in my forestry career, I used to just drink from the creeks out of my hard hat. You can't really do that now. It's not safe. And I don't know, Warren, I think that it seems like our endeavors for increasing economic wealth, through all of that work, we have tended to disconnect ourselves from the ecosystems that are providing those critical elements for happiness. And it's not just, it's not just your health. It's not just if I go see Warren and he does my standard physical. It's my ability to share with my children and my grandchildren. These are the things that are being affected. So, what's going on with this, Warren?
Well, in 25 words or less. I mean, it's a story of humans going from being wanderers and foragers over the face of the earth to coalescing into communities because we could stay in one spot because we started to cultivate grains primarily. And then gradually those communities gained, all sorts of characteristics that are very familiar to us today. Hierarchies that were vertical and related to power. And those at the top were in a position to tell those at the bottom what to do, and there was no recourse for the latter. And progressively, we've developed that kind of approach throughout societies. It has some efficiencies. There's some ways that this coordinates large groups of people to do constructive things. But it's also meant that for a lot of us, we've lost that sense of caring about the external natural world, and we're focused almost exclusively on our inner world of human society. Yeah. And in that world, we don't have to worry about what happens to that external world. As the ecological economists would say, the human economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the natural economy. But we've only just started to perceive that again. Now our indigenous relatives, and I would say they're relatives because we all go back to some common ancestors, and our indigenous friends and neighbors now have a lot to say about that. They have kept their relationship with the land that we have lost. They see the natural ecosystem as a central issue in the life of everyone, where we see it as kind of peripheral and tangential and out there and who cares. As a result, we have started to do, over the last 150 years, some pretty careless, foolish things to natural ecosystems. And I see it through a health lens, but it doesn't matter what lens you see it through. We're not just doing things that we don't know we're doing. We're deliberately saying we don't need to know what we're doing because it's going to be all right because we're in charge.
Right.
Of course, we're never in charge. Mother Nature is in charge, and we have her imprint on our lives, our genetic material, and our physical form, and we can't get away from it. You know the stats now that 95% of the mammals and us on the planet Earth are our mammals, the ones that we eat or consort with, you know, dogs and cats, cows, sheep, pigs, goats, etc., chickens. 95% of the mass of mammals is us and our pet, tame, desired animals. All the wild animals are the 5% left over. Now, 100 years ago, it was the exact opposite.
Wow.
So stats like that are compelling. They force us to really start to rethink what we're doing. And the path is opening up. I mean, a show like yours is part of a trend that is leading us back to reality, our place in the planetary universe. And as we get there and we uncover the disasters we have created inadvertently or through sheer hubris, our prideful approach to this planet's functioning, we're starting to wake up. And the waking up process is what we're beginning to see all around us. And it could have happened a long time ago, but thank God it's happening now. It has to happen.
Yes. Yes, and we still have an opportunity. We have lots of opportunities. We really need to get to that awareness and
Yeah, there's no time to waste.
right.
And what I try to do is I look at the minds of my patients and of the minds of the people I meet, and when I do presentations, it's in that space, that mind space, that we will wake up and learn to do things better. So we have to really, ultimately, the whole of our species has to change its mind, the dominant mindset, which is exploitative, extractive, and basically imbued with this idea that the planet is our resource to exploit as we wish. We have to change that, and we are changing it, but we have to do it very deliberately and with a certain amount of expeditiousness. We can't just sit around and dilly.
Yeah, and so, this show is about connection. The way we connect is through our relationships. And you mentioned it. It's getting ourselves back to where we were, where we had accepted the responsibility for caring for this natural capital rather than seeing it as just an asset that we can exploit. So if we
Yeah,
change our relationship and how we connect with that, I think that's an answer.
yeah,
Oh, did you hear that?
I did.
That's time to get a little less serious. That means it's time for the rapid fire questions.
Oh my God, I'm prepared. I got my running shoes on.
The truth is you're not. You have no idea what's coming.
No, I've been practicing for the last 75 years, so don't.
All right. So the idea here is just a quick question. You give me your first response. There's nothing dangerous in here, but it'll tell us a little bit more about you. And it's usually we get a little bit of fun out of it as well. So are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Here we go. Warren,
Right.
are you an early bird or a night owl?
Both.
Both. How can you don't you sleep?
No, I just do one. I'm up at night sometimes and up at the day other times. I like
Ah,
more spare time out of the office so I can sleep when I'm tired and wake when I'm full of beans.
okay. Well, I didn't expect that. Um, I'm an early bird, just so you know.
I like
Uh,
early.
what's your favorite binge food?
Oh God, I think food in general. Give me enough and I'll binge on it. No, I've had a funny relationship to food. When I was a kid, I was called the hollow leg kid. If I ate 3 helpings of everything, I was applauded. So now I do this intermittent fasting, and so
Okay,
I try to change my relationship to food. I cannot eat all the food in the world before I die, so
right.
I'm reconciling myself to that fact.
Yeah, that's cool. My nana used to say I had a hollow leg when it came to spaghetti. I don't.
Yeah, well, that's the Italian in you coming out.
I guess so. Uh, how many keys are on your key ring,
Oh,
roughly?
I got two key rings. One's got about 8, and the other's got about 12, maybe something like that.
Wow, lots of keys.
I don't know what half of them do anymore.
Yeah.
They unlock the secrets of life, I think, but I don't know where the lock is. So
Do you carry them in your pocket, or do you like hook them up like a jailer and walk around all jingly?
they're in my pocket, jacket pocket, which I do not wear.
um, I just got a really cool keychain from Sophie Collins, who's an Indigenous intern I worked with through the summer. She's actually a third year physics undergrad at the Thompson Rivers University. Incredible young woman, and she just gave me um, a medicine wheel, beaded medicine wheel keychain for that. So now I've got this great big thing that I carry around, but it's a great reminder of my connection to the land all the time.
We
Love
have
it.
to play it all the time too.
Okay, now I'm doing way too much. I'm not supposed to be answering these questions. You are. So let's get back on track here. Solar or wind?
Um, well, both plus
Okay. I knew
energy,
that I knew you were a proponent of both, so I was going to get you on that one.
energy efficiency first, though. Energy efficiency first.
What's your favorite exercise or sport?
Well, you whittle it down as the years go by, and my current favorite, and for some time, is going for a jog in Coyote Park, which is a little park near where I live that is all up and down. So I spavin myself in about a half hour and come home feeling I've really committed myself to bodily health beyond measure.
So, yeah, hiking out on the land in the forest, that's a beautiful forest. I like that one too. Tell us something interesting about you that not many of us would know.
Well, I don't know. It depends what your interests are, but I play the violin.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Very competent. I would have played a tune, but Johnny Cash got there before I did. Um, but and I used to play field hockey for the Canadian team.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
I have the scars to prove it too, as well.
Yeah, that's like lacrosse. That's a hard game on the shins. Tell us something interesting about, sorry, that was the last one. Where were you born?
Vancouver, BC.
Vancouver, beautiful spot. If you had access to a time machine, Warren, where and when would you go?
Ah,
Like,
you know, every time I try to think about that, I try to think. I used to have a yen. My first interest was archaeology, and I wanted to live in times past. And then I saw the movie Barry Lyndon by Stanley Kubrick, and the guy has his leg chopped off under alcohol anesthesia. End of my desire to be in another era. But I really, really just want to be in the era I'm in. Not because it's better or worse, but because that's where one can connect one's energies. It's I just can't bring myself to say another era would be better. Another era would be better or worse or different or the same. I'm just want to be somewhere where I can live, like be alive and interact.
all right, red or blue?
Oh, gee. Well, probably blue.
Okay, and no American politics came into that. Last question, Mac or PC?
Well, I always thought I would like to have a Mac, but they were too expensive about 25 years ago, so I got a PC, and now they're better than they used to be, so I'm reconciled.
Oh, there you go.
I've
All
had it.
right. That's interesting. Yes, Macs are definitely more expensive. I
Mm,
use one. I think they last for a long, long time though.
they do. They do.
All right. So this show is about the connection of things, and the opposite of connection is disconnection. And it feels like to me, since well, the big marker that I see when I look back historically, that like because you mentioned this, like we all used to have this connection with the
Mhm.
physical realities of our world. That's we had to in order to survive, and we got
Mhm.
really good at it, especially in groups or tribes or clans, because we needed to rely on each other. And then the Industrial Revolution came along and sort of tilted the bar on that. And it seems to me like we've sort of gotten into this mindset that um, economies are now the thing that nourishes us, not the environment. And because of that, I'll also, this little thing called reductionist science approach
Mhm.
combined to focus our view into sectors. So, like agriculture, tourism, mining, forestry, tourism, whatever. Um, and we get really specialized. But then we become disconnected from everything else. And then that starts to cause confusion. So, how do you see us being able to get reconnected?
Well, pain is a great motivator.
Pain.
Pain, death, that helps a lot. It's pain, sickness, and death are my best friends in the professional world that I work in. I think it's not so much how or when, it has to be now and on all fronts. Um, I think the idea of chopping things up into bits has motivated a lot of our exploration of the world around us, and also the way we think. Because for many people, having an understanding of what goes on the other side of the planet has been very difficult up until about 25 or 30 years ago. Thank heavens for the internet, because it allows it is so easy to see what other people are doing, and therefore so important to sort of say, is this what I would do or not? That I
Yeah.
think we're starting to change quite quickly. Um, I, we're considered by many people in the scientific community to be living in what's called the Anthropocene, the world in which human behavior is shaping the state of the planet.
Yeah.
Uh, the philosopher Glenn Albrecht, who's also a very ardent environmental advocate in Australia, coined the term solastalgia, meaning you look out the window and you see your home place and you don't feel at home anymore because it's been so transformed by various kinds of extractive or other human-based activities. Now, Glenn Albrecht recently coined another term to follow on the Anthropocene. He called it the Symbiocene. And it means, in essence, that we have to enter a new era. The new era would be the era in which all things work together, including us with all the other creatures, landforms, and components of our planetary home. And as soon as I saw the term, it struck a chord with me. I've actually met Glenn at a conference a few years ago, and I just think it's so precisely accurate in the principle it outlines for us to follow.
So
So I
symbio coming from symbiosis, right?
absolutely, yeah, symbiotic relationships are relationships that are mutually beneficial,
Right.
uh, and we cannot. I mean, it just means living together, symbiosis. But in this particular setting, it means living together constructively rather than to each component's mutual distress. And I think that's where we're headed. I think he's put the right name to it. Once you name something, you can start defining it and characterizing it, and then using the term to guide what one does in terms of all sorts of activities. In fact, the whole spectrum of activities in our lives.
Right. Well, we talked last week with Jill. That was actually her CFX
Mm.
library connection was the Anthropocene. And so if you want to hear more and Jill's perspective on that, check out that last show. Uh, Symbiocene, I like that. And that's kind of the, well, we just, lichens would be a good example for us. Maybe we could find some answers right there.
Talk to the lichens. That's
Talk to
my
the lichens.
thought for the day. Talk to the lichens.
All right, so we're going to move into the last segment of the day, which is the CFX library, where uh, every week I ask the guest to come up with one link that they would like to share that if people are interested in what we've been talking about, it's another reference point. And of course, there's always many, but we just share one that's out there that the guest is interested in. So, Warren, what's What's your recommendation this week?
Um, the author Paul Hawken, who wrote a book called The Ecology of Commerce, about how the business world has to become ecologically aware and act on that awareness. And another book called Blessed Unrest, which is about the upsurging, the massive upsurge in nonprofit and citizen-based organizations all around the world, which are speaking to the issues that the private sector, the for-profit world, and the governance sector, the various levels of governments throughout the world, are not yet paying attention to. And he's a very intelligent, articulate writer. And he initiated about 6 or 7 years ago the Drawdown Project. The Drawdown refers to getting to net zero carbon economy. And he gathered about 100 or more scientists and experts in a whole range of fields and said, we're going to lock you up in a room and give you food under the door and a potty to do your thing in, and until you come out with a coherent plan for addressing climate change drawdown, and we want you to come up with your best answer. And they because it was a wide range of scientific experts, their solution is very comprehensive, and it includes human conduct and human ideas, our way of looking at things and our structure of our society. And interestingly, the thing that he said would best, or that this group of people said would best reduce climate change factors, the greenhouse gas production, would be empowering women and girls. Now, we all use the phrase, half, that hold up half the sky, the humans that hold up half the sky, that's women. We use phrases like that. But actually, this project came to the conclusion that will reduce our impact on the planet with respect to climate change, which we're all concerned about, faster than anything else. And it's partly because if women are empowered, they don't have a whole bunch of pregnancies. They take control of their bodies. They exert their interests in the world, which is far more likely to be nurturing and supportive than us wild-eyed males who run around and bang into things.
Yes. You and I both know that it's very wise to take the guidance of women. They have, just a different perspective, as you said, as men in general. I mean, this is really broad brush stuff, but I know that that's a very empowering opportunity in so much of the world where that level of equality still isn't there, that gender equality isn't there, and so it's a great opportunity. So I shared that link up on the screen, drawdown.org, and the two references that Warren referenced of the books. We'll put links to those in the show notes below. So awesome references, Warren. Thank you.
Right.
As we draw to a close here, I just want to invite you, if you like this, do a couple of things. First of all, hit subscribe to the channel. And something I've learned that I didn't really understand about YouTube, but does make things better for me, is to hit that little bell, which is a little notification. And then you're aware of new shows that come along or new videos that are put up. So when I'm following along with some other channels that I'm really interested in, I don't have to do the work to be constantly checking to see if there's an update. I can just rely on that. So that's a nice thing. I'd also invite you to go to my website, www.barryjwilson.com. There's lots of resources there, stories, case study downloads. We're going to be moving the CFX library or adding that over there. So lots of great spots. This is a movement, as Warren said. This is a global movement. I'm hoping that we can bring all of us that are interested in this together and be more powerful, have a bigger voice. So go over there and join with us. Hit subscribe, get the updates, and browse around all of the resources that are there. Warren, I've gotten to know you. I moved to this town in 2004. And almost immediately I was aware Warren's work in our community. He gives so freely of his time and energy to so many. And this is yet another example. So I just want to say thank you so much for your dedication, your huge generosity to share, and all of the work that you do to bring people together to have a better future. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for your kind words.
All right. So next week, we'll have another super exciting show. Make sure you subscribe and be here 11 a.m. Pacific.